Next up, we have Develoger and web workers. Give it up, round of applause for Develoger.
Hello everybody, my name is Develoger, or as my mother gave me name, Dusan. Yeah, but Develoger is more cool, I guess. And I come from Serbia. I'm in Berlin for 1 month, and I work for this company. It's called Smava, and we do online loans. So I never thought that working with money is going to be any kind of fun until I came here, so it is, kind of. So today we talk about the web workers. It's kind of a tricky topic and a weird one as well, because it's already 2018, and can you show hands who is using this stuff? Yeah, it is like that. So I'm senior front-end engineer and technical product owner at Smava, as I said. I blog at www.develoger.com, and the same, I use the same, how to say, the Twitter handle. So let's start. This is a bit of a history already. I mean, you know, I grew up in the 90s, and for me, like 10 years ago is always like 1999, you know. so yeah. I mean, but 10 years ago was like almost this. And before we had this kind of React, Angular, and all sorts of like mambo jumbo on the front end, we needed something in order to support it. And in 2009 actually happened this revolution that people don't know so much, or they know, but that I'm not aware of. And it's called JIT, or better say like just-in-time compiler. And on many job interviews, you will hear this question like, is JavaScript compiled or interpreted? And yeah, it is both. So when some nice people introduced the just-in-time compiler, the whole like performance of executing JavaScript really elevated. And then in 2013, the React came as a result of that, and also as a result of Facebook's try to basically elevate some of the heavyweight lifting to the user devices, which was very nice from them. Okay, so let's move on. So why web workers? I mean, if in this 2009 somebody introduced a thing which can which opened the door for like client-rich applications. And then, as we all know, like client-rich application need to be executed in a browser. That means like single stack of execution. And that's basically, you know, when they say like JavaScript is a single thread. I mean, it's not JavaScript that is single thread, it's just the browser that are single thread, kind of. So even though that just a few people lifted hands and saying that they use the web workers today, web workers as a web workers, not service worker, are introduced a long time ago. And basically what does that mean? Is that the browser support is super. You can easily use it from Internet Explorer 11 and above. But also, yeah, even though it introduces this like multi-thread support, and it kind of fixes the single thread on the front end, it's still not widely used for a number of reasons. So no matter of the asynchronous nature of the web APIs, which was also like a part of Mohammed's talk, and like, you know, all these web APIs like set timeout, XML, HTTP request, and so on and so on. Like there are many of them that work asynchronously, but that's not multi-thread, it's just not blocking. What that means is that some functionality is like elevated to the web API, and then once it's finished, it's still going to like return to the main thread or this single stack of execution. So yeah, this is about the browser and a Node.js. Because of these cool times that we live in, we can run the JavaScript on both ends, the front end and the back end. And as you can see, like in this visualization, it can give you the information that the web workers are very well supported in the browser. And as they are part of the web APIs, they're not supported in Node.js. like at least not natively. That means that yeah, because essentially that's called web workers. And the Node.js as itself is like built so that it's going to be work as a kind of ecosystem on this single thread as well. I'm just not going to go deep and talk about the C libraries that Node.js consumes, and that, they can have like the multi-thread stuff, but it's not Node.js, not the JavaScript. So the synchronous code blocks the browser. I mean, sometimes it can actually block your browser, like literally block your UI as well, not just the execution of the JavaScript. And it's obvious, everybody knows, but even if you postpone execution of some calculation, that will not solve your problem. It will just delay the inevitable, Because if you do some async actions and then whatever is returned, you will still, for example, this is the usual API call stuff. You get your JSON and then you need to parse it. I mean, this parse thing is synchronous. It was always synchronous and still is synchronous. And if you have like some huge data set, you can imagine. And I had, sadly, a lot of bad architecture-styled projects that ended up doing the weird things. So most of the time, what happens is that people on the backend, for any reason, don't want to send you the appropriate format. So you get the data, and what happens is that you need to parse it. Sometimes it's huge, so that parsing is going to block your execution, of course. And then you need to reorder it or to reformat it and do also incredibly horrible stuff that I don't accept anymore, luckily. And if you want to use your web workers for that, I mean, please don't. Just come by to your backend guys and fix this stuff. Don't just patch it up. So we came to the taboo. And when web workers are in question, the taboo topics are basically DOM, window object, more than less, or the parent object. So in the web workers scope of execution, you cannot access DOM directly. I mean, you can still like pass to the worker whatever you like, but you cannot access it directly, and you shouldn't. That's not the reason why they started to exist. Of course, there is this like green stuff, so that's the thing that you should do. So in the web worker, you can access the navigator object, of course, which can be useful. I intentionally colored in red this user agent, because even if you go to the MDN website, you will see like thumbs down for the user agent, which is super, because I really hope that now in 2018, people stopped detecting their devices by the user agent and kind of continued to detect the features of the environment and use whatever is available. So in the web worker, you can access the XML HTTP request. That's important to know. And of course, by then you can do all sorts of like data fetching if needed. But the web worker is not a standalone thing, and basically within the one web worker, you can load as many as the sub workers you need. Thus, in like theory, you can go nuts with this like horizontal scaling of your resources and like doing things in like million threads. But you don't do it, please. Because there is one misconception about this. You can use your web workers in order to elevate the heavyweight lifting, but even though it's not going to block your main stack of execution, it's still going to affect your device performance, because at the end it's just one CPU that does all of this stuff. So the web worker or the worker and service worker are not the same. Oh, shit. That's fine. So the worker resides in the global scope. That means that you can instantiate it from within any place, and just by using the new worker, new keyword on this worker object or a method. You can have as many workers per tab as you want. This is a very key difference between the service worker and worker. And it's very well supported. And for the service workers, they need to be registered. I mean, the service worker, one service worker needs to be registered via the navigator service worker register. And that means that you can just have one service worker per the domain. And that was the whole idea. Yeah? It's just like having a one service worker that handles all this stuff, which is more than less just, no, I mean, not just, but kind of a proxy for your data, and with heavyweight lifting in terms of like caching and stuff. And yeah, you cannot use the XML HTTP request within the service worker. You can use fetch. I mean, I don't know the reasoning. What I think that it is, it's basically that fetch is like better. Because with XML HTTP requests, you will need to write a lot of custom logic or to consume some libraries in order to do some simple stuff which just comes shipped with the fetch. And the support is limited. So yeah, this is basically like one kind of a phone call between the web main context of execution, your like application, and the web worker. And on the first iteration of like this changing the messages, I mean, before I start, just to say that web workers are all about communication. And that's basically just what they do. The API is very simple, and all the things that you need to do is to instantiate the object, as you see, to instantiate the worker, to post some message to worker, like to provide some data to it, and then on this blue stuff, when it says like web worker, this is actually part which is written within the worker itself, within this webworker.js file. You actually just wait for a message, and then you do whatever you like with it. In this case, you just return some method which processes the data, and then on the main context, you just wait for you just have a listener basically that waits for that return back message and do something with it, and that's it. I mean, very simple. And what are the use cases? Yeah, this is kind of a topic for itself, because if you want to move your unresponsive code to the web worker, like, don't do it, please, because it's just going to, it's just like putting trash below, how to say, the carpet, yeah. I mean, eventually your wife will come and then you're screwed. So, yeah, repacking / reformatting of data sets, more or less always lazy backend. So don't do it on the front end, please. Even if you elevate it to some like application state, Redux, Mobix, whatever, and then you do this heavy stuff within the worker, it's still horrible. Like, you just should not do it. And yeah, like I said, it's going to affect your UX, which is like very important. And I mean, the multi-threading is not about heavy lifting. It's just about not blocking your main stack. So imagine that you have this e-commerce solution, and you have a button that says like add to cart, and then you start some heavy calculations, no matter what it is. One of our colleagues had this use case where he basically, they needed to scan the QR code, and when you scan the QR code, sometimes it can, just consume a lot of resources if you want to do something with it, to process it and stuff. So what they did is that they thought to put this in a worker, because if you scan this stuff and it needs to do something which can endanger the usage of your current execution stack, and if it just gets stuck on the stack executing, if you click on this button to add to cart something, a product, that action will need, of course, to update some state, and then to just, push the changes throughout your application. So when you click to this like add to cart button, and this stuff is going to continue executing in the background on your stack, you will not be able to do it basically. So in this modern age of like e-commerce, it's not only about having the like fastest page load time, it's also about never ever have this situation when you block your execution stack with anything. And yeah, at the end, basically like if you want to terminate a worker, you can do just this simple thing, worker.terminate, and then you do it from the main context of your application, or you can do like self.close, also use this method for the same purpose. Okay, so this is like the very simple, very simple example. It's not fancy in some like React framework or stuff. It's just like pure JavaScript, nothing special. So what do we do here is that the only thing that you need to think about is this calculate primes. Actually, I took this method from the MDN, and what does it do? It's just doing some horrible stuff, like doing basically the random calculations, and yeah, it's very horrible. So basically, you just want to make your CPU artificially go crazy. And yeah, here I just did on window onload. I just waited for 4 seconds because I wanted my web page to be at least at some point like responsive. So if you reload the page, we can like see how it updates, and then it doesn't. I mean, I'm still clicking and nothing happens because the heavy calculation started, and I can do this. And if I'm a user, you know, I would just say like, oh, this doesn't work, like, and I would press like 10 times, and then I would just stop, and then maybe close the website, and then there is no purchase or stuff. So how you can fix it is very easy, and in this case, we can just remove this horrible code and replace it with a worker. So you basically instantiate a new worker. This method accepts a path, and then you define a message to be posted to the worker. That's basically just some kind of object. And here you just wait for worker to return you something. Simple as that. So if you go to our web page and we reload it, you will see that basically I can click all day long. Yeah, and it works. So I'm not going to lie to you, like there is not a magical answer on like what are the use cases for it. And that's one of the reasons why people don't use it, is that, I mean, if you need to use it, you will know. Or maybe you will be wrong by knowing it. Because the thing is that most of the time, people, if they write a good code, it will not end up in a situation where you need to solve it by the worker. But in some specific scenarios, if we have in mind the limitation of our smartphones, especially, we should consider elevating something, even like the API calls, to the worker. Because it's all about not blocking your stack execution and basically nothing else. Thank you.